Are you on the verge of upgrading your podcast production system and just not sure what to do? Well, I've just upgraded mine, and in this video we'll be looking at my new iMac 2020. Hi, I'm Mike, producer of true crime podcast Casefile and Casefile Presents shows. On this channel, I'm releasing videos on podcasting, audio production, and what's like to be a podcast producer. So if you enjoy this kind of content, hit subscribe and notification buttons. In a previous video, I mentioned that I'm in the process of getting a new iMac. Now, for the last 5 years, I've worked on a late 2015 27-inch iMac with 3TB Fusion drive and 32GB of RAM. Now, the system has served me well, but now it was time for an update. At the beginning of August 2020, Apple released their new line of iMac. Now, I looked at the specs and decided to upgrade. And in this video, I'll be looking at the cost, the performance, and how much better the system is for podcast production. Now, let's jump to Apple website. When selecting the computer, I went for 27-inch iMac, 3.8 GHz, 8-core Intel Core i7. There are also a few other options that I've selected as well. But why 27-inch? Well, I find that for my work, 27-inch screen is good and large enough to do work on just that. And I think anything less than that, I would need two screens, but 27-inch screen sits well on my desk. Also, the 27-inch iMac is one of the few Apple computers with upgradable third-party RAM modules, and that's very important, but we'll get to that in a bit. When selecting the computer, I stayed with a standard glass and CPU. With memory, I left it at 8GB. I left the graphic card as it was. With the storage, it's all SSD now, and it's kinda expensive. And like I mentioned earlier, on my previous system, I worked with 3TB Fusion drive and I used most of it. So 512GB would be too small, but venturing into 2TB or 4TB territory, it just gets really expensive. So I've upgraded to 1TB of internal SSD storage for additional £200. Now with Ethernet connection, I've paid additional £100 to upgrade it to 10GB. My internet is not as fast, it's kind of slow at the moment anyway, but I've done it for future-proofing the computer. So if I work on it for a few years and then I want to sell, I think 10GB Ethernet connection will be a good selling point. I left Magic Mouse 2 as it was and changed the keyboard to British numeric. Now let's talk about RAM and storage. The iMac is one of the few Apple computers that lets you upgrade the RAM yourself, and that means you can access it from behind. Now, the 2020 iMac was attractive to me because it supported up to 128GB of RAM, and that's a lot. But if we are looking at the shopping list and want to upgrade from 8GB to 128GB on Apple website, that will cost you extra £2,600. And that's more than the actual system, and that's just insane. The good news is that just like with the old system, I can upgrade with third-party RAM module. Now, I usually go for Crucial RAM, but they were all out of 32GB modules. So after searching online, I stumbled upon the website called Mr. Memory, and they had 32GB Samsung modules in stock. So I've ordered 4, and that adds up to 128GB. Now the total was around £500, only £2,000 cheaper than the RAM from Apple. And the other thing was storage. Now, like I said, I've upgraded to 1TB of internal SSD. But in the past, I was working on 3TB internal Fusion drive and I was using most of it. So I needed an external storage fast enough to be able to work from. Now, I use the normal HDs for archives, but after researching that stuff online, it became obvious that I will need to buy SSD, which is a solid-state drive. It's much faster than HDD. Now, I went for a SanDisk 2TB drive, and they're small and portable, and at the time the price was around £250. And now let's look back at the Apple shopping list. The 2TB upgrade was additional £600, and 4TB, as they don't do threes, £1,200, so I saved massively there as well. And that's about it when it comes to purchasing the actual system. Before the new system was delivered, I decided to copy everything over. I've also decided that the main software will be installed on the internal SSD. However, all my instrument libraries, that's around 200 gigabytes, as well as working projects, which is over 1 terabyte, will be on the external drive. So I copied everything. When the new system arrived, the first thing I did was take out the original 8 gigabytes modules from Apple and install 128 gigabytes from Samsung. I then switched the system on. It asked me if I want to use their migration assistant, as I had both old and new systems on the same network, to transfer the files over. I declined, and then I installed the software onto the internal SSD drive, and that's Pro Tools, Omnisphere, iZotope plugins, Adobe CC, and the rest. And I've also linked the libraries to the external SSD. The install was very fast. That's thanks to SSD and RAM. I've copied my plugins and other settings and decided to test the system. Now, the first thing is that everything opens really quickly. Pro Tools runs smoothly. The commands are very fast, and there is no lag at all. And I've also run all the sessions from the external SSD. iZotope RX. Now, I've mentioned before that I wasn't able to work in a full screen mode. There was too much lag and the old system just wasn't having it. The problem is gone now. I can edit, I can work in a full screen mode without any problems. The modules are faster, my keyboard actions, they're really quick, and module chains, they still take time, but the renders are quicker as well. The other thing is bounces and renders within Pro Tools, and that's what I was looking forward to testing. Now, my podcasting templates are built in a way that all the mixing, mastering plugins, the reverbs run at the same time, and that allows me for efficiency during podcast production. But also means that's all pretty CPU heavy, and if I had anything else going on in the background, like a browser or a chat or whatever, I would get system crashes and CPU overloads. Now, I didn't have any so far on the new system. And when it comes to bounces, the commit from audio to MIDI, that would take around up to a couple minutes for a 5-minute MIDI track. Now it's maybe 30 seconds. So again, much quicker. The big one is of course the main bounce. That means bouncing down the full episode with all the plugins running within Pro Tools. Now, on the old system, the offline bounce would be times 1.9, which means that for an hour of podcast, it would take about 30 minutes to bounce down. On the new system, the bouncing offline goes up to times 2.9, which is over 50% faster. In this video, it will show you up to 2.7, and I think it's because QuickTime was recording the screen in the background, but it does go to 2.9. Now, I was bouncing from external SSD, but if I copied the session to internal SSD, the speed, the render was the same, so no changes there, and that means that I can work from the external SSD without any lag, any delays. I've also done some music composition running the virtual instrument libraries from external SSD, and the load time is quicker than it was on my old internal Fusion drive, and that's great news as well. So what is the verdict? Well, as you would expect with a brand new computer and 4x the amount of RAM, everything's just much quicker, runs smoothly, and there is barely any load times at all, be it with keyboard shortcuts, plugins, new settings, whatever. And having that external SSD drive helps massively as well. Like I showed you, there is no lag at all, so I can work from it without any problems, and it's actually faster than working from the previous internal Fusion drive. Overall, I'm happy with the upgrade. However, one thing that I'm a little bit disappointed in is that the design of the system hasn't changed. And you'd expect that after so many years, the company would freshen it up a little bit. And when I'm looking at it, it doesn't actually seem that I've gotten an update, which is a bit of a shame, but again, that's just me. So if you're thinking about an upgrade, remember that 27-inch iMacs still have the option to upgrade with third-party RAM, and getting external storage is pretty easy as well. Apple will soon be moving their computers onto their own ARM chips, leaving Intel behind. Now, if you're hesitant because of that, remember that the transition will still take a bit of time. And also, we don't know if third-party software such as PROAUDIO or plugins or virtual instruments will work with these new chips straight away. But if you find your system lagging, if you're thinking about, upgrading, I recommend new iMacs. That's of course if you're looking at Apple computers. I find that everything, is much faster and will make the work more enjoyable. But that's it for today. I'm Mike from Mike Migas Production. If you enjoyed this video, if you want to learn more about podcasting, check out the rest of the channel or my website, that's mikemigas.com. For now, share, like, subscribe, and I'll see you later.